I noticed before that people's Instagram handles are here, which is hilarious to me. Why is my Instagram handle there? Anyway, you're all required to follow me on Instagram now. We were asked, oh, I'm wearing my hat. I did this event. Oh, how rude of me. I did this event not that long ago, and the woman I forget who it was, we were on stage, and she reached over and took my hat off and was like, don't wear your hat in public. Sorry, that's so rude of me. Anyway, I'm supposed to talk about boldness, but I'm also not supposed to talk with notes, so I'm really breaking the rules, but because I'm going to talk about shyness. I was a very shy child, and I don't really know what accounts for that. I'm a parent now myself, and now it's my feeling that your personality is just fixed from the start. Some people like the color yellow, some people like dogs, some people love cheese and hate cats. I like cheese and I hate cats. Some people are shy. Now, I'm standing up here tonight telling you this story, so maybe it goes without saying that I'm not really that shy anymore, because I learned how to be something else. I never entirely believe people who talk about their childhoods with any specificity. I don't remember really anything that happened to me when I was a kid. And in part, I think that's because I didn't do anything except for read. I had a book with me basically the entirety of my childhood. I would take a book to recess, and I would in fact pray that rain would mean that recess was canceled and I could go to the library. I was constantly dragged around to things with my parents because that's what it is to be a child. And we would go and see an aunt or uncle. When you're an immigrant, you're always going to see some aunt or some uncle. And I would sit in the backseat of the car and read. And in a way, the only thing that I really remember from my childhood is the texture of the back seats in our gray Nissan Maxima. My favorite book was a book called Harriet the Spy, which I bet a lot of people in this room know. Yeah, I heard a lot of gasps. It's a classic. Harriet is this horrible, obnoxious kid who, she comes home every day after school. Also, this is not legible to you when you're 8 and reading it, but she's rich. She lives on the Upper East Side in this huge house and has a maid and a cook, and she has cake every day after school. Anyway, she has an amazing life. But she comes home after school, and she has a snack, and she changes into her spy clothes, and she goes out to spy on her neighbors on the Upper East Side. She watches this handsome man who has too many cats, and she watches this old lady who has given up on life and taken to her bed, and she watches this grocery delivery boy who can't stop eating. And she writes about these people in her notebook. I was a lot like Harriet. I was obnoxious, and I imitated her notebook of private thoughts. And like Harriet, I was really interested in watching other people, and I much preferred that to doing anything myself. Harriet was bold in this way that I never felt like I could be, because she went out into the world, and she took notes about what she saw. Now, Harriet the Spy is not really a suitable favorite book for a boy. The nice woman at the public library was always trying to get me to read books about boys. But I was born in 1977, so the books about boys that you were forced to read in 1986 were about boys playing sports or doing stuff in the wilderness. This is the last thing I wanted to read about. And really, books about boys reminded me that I was kind of a failure at being a boy, because the last thing I wanted to do was play sports or go into the wilderness. One of the secrets I was trying to keep as a child was that it was mostly girls I read about, because girls had this liberty that I could only imagine. It's not that they were allowed to have romantic feelings about boys, but that was probably part of it. I can see now, from the vantage of adulthood, that the shyness of my youth had so much to do with the fact that I was just a sissy, that I was really baffled by the way other boys were not, and that I was terrified to do anything, to throw a ball, to talk too loud, to run, that might let people see who I actually was. So I thought if I did nothing, if I laid low, if I read my book, nobody would ever notice me. None of this really bothered me because I had Harriet for company. Harriet was the spy who changed my life, and she shows up in another book by Louise Fitzhugh. I wonder if people who got excited about Harriet the Spy will know this book. It's called The Long Secret. It's actually a better book than Harriet the Spy. It's not really a sequel to Harriet the Spy because it's a book about someone else. It's a book about this girl named Beth Ellen, who's a classmate of Harriet's in the city. They're rich, like I said, so they go to the Hamptons for the summer, and Harriet and Beth Ellen are neighbors. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The Long Secret is this book set in Watermill, New York. And there's like something strange happening in Watermill in the summer that this book takes place. Somebody is leaving these horrible, very cruel anonymous notes all around town. They're poison pen letters, basically. These weird aphorisms and biblical quotations that are really cruel and hurtful. Whoever is writing these notes knows exactly what to say to the person who's received them, and they're not holding back. There's a mean checkout girl at the grocery store, and she gets a note at the beginning of the book that just says, "Jesus hates you." So Beth Ellen, who's the protagonist of this book, she lives with her grandmother because her mother is this horrible socialite. She has the most perfect name of any fictional character in the world. Her name is Zini. Zini comes back to the Hamptons for the summer. She has a new husband in tow, and she hates her shy daughter. She complains about Beth Ellen's meek appearance, her limp demeanor, her interest in going to college. And Zini, of course, ultimately receives one of these poison pen letters, and it says, "In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children." It's the meanest thing you can say to a parent. This is a spoiler alert for a 40-year-old book, but the person who's sending these notes turns out to be Beth Ellen, this meek little kid. Beth Ellen is so meek that everyone at school, including her friend Harriet, calls her Mouse. And Beth Ellen refers to herself throughout the book as Mouse. But she doesn't seem to mind that because she has these notes, she has this outlet, and she's been watching everyone around her, her monstrous bitch of a mother, the mean girl at the local store, and she knows what to say to them. And at the end of The Long Secret, I just read this book not that long ago, and I was really, I remain really shocked by this sentiment. Beth Ellen is talking to her grandmother, and her grandmother says, "Oh, you're so shy. You're very shy, aren't you?" And then she says, "Shy people are angry people." I think that's such an astute observation for a book that is ultimately meant for children. Because I was shy, but really, I was angry. I was angry at myself that I couldn't be what I thought a boy was, which was, of course, much simpler than being angry at the abstraction of society itself, at whoever decided that there's only one acceptable way to be a child. But it didn't matter, it kept me shy. By college, this feeling dissipated, and that shyness dissipated, but I can still access that anger and that shyness if I think about it. I'm angry at myself for not letting myself be a child. And I'm angry at this received idea that there's one acceptable way to be a child. But the world is really different now than it was when I was a kid. And I think it's better in some ways. It's worse in much more obvious ways, unfortunately. But it's better in this one way, which is that I can say to you tonight, without it being a punchline, that it's these two made-up little girls who helped me become a man. Louise Fitzhugh's fictional heroines, I think, shaped the course of my life. Harriet and Beth Ellen both knew that writing things down is a way of exerting power. And that's what I do now for a living. And the page is the place where I feel most free. And for the most part in my life, I don't feel bold at all. But when I'm writing, I do. And I suspect that that is why fearful people are really insistent about banning books. Because they do have this power to make those of us who are just a mouse into a man, or as the case may be, into the most bold thing I can think of, which turns out to be a little girl. Thank you.